Fox News alert, 4 police officers shot. One of them killed execution style in 4 separate attacks within a 24-hour period yesterday. Right now, a manhunt in San Antonio, Texas for the killer who pulled up in a car and gunned down an officer in his squad car while he was writing a ticket. In St. Louis, an officer shot twice in the face while driving in what police are calling an ambush. He's expected to survive. 2 other officers shot and injured, one in Gladstone, Missouri, the other in Sanibel, Florida. The victim killed in the San Antonio attack, identified as Detective Benjamin Marconi, and the suspect is still on the loose. We'll bring you any new information as we get it and talk later in the hour about what is fueling this war on law enforcement. Another Fox News alert for you on new developments at Trump Tower as President-elect Donald Trump's White House takes shape. All this after a big meeting over the weekend with former GOP presidential nominee Mitt Romney, a top candidate for the Secretary of State spot. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith. Happy Monday, everyone. Here today is Meghan McCain, host of Kennedy on Fox Business. Kennedy is here. Also from FBN, Dagan McDowell. And today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, Fox News correspondent Adam Housley is here, and he is outnumbered. Good to have you back.
Housley's in the house.
I know. It's been tough to get out here. You guys have been so busy. We've been so busy, but it's nice to see you guys in person for a change.
Hey, good to
bring
see
a
you
little bit of sunshine here to this cold.
Oh man, I tell you, it was
it's
80 degrees when I left. Though it's raining there now, so
I got to twist a knife, man.
I know.
It is a cold day in New York City, that's for sure. All right, we are getting a lot of new details on how President-elect Trump's team is shaping up. His focus now shifting from national security to economic and domestic policy issues. He's meeting today with former Texas governor and primary rival Rick Perry, former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown, Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin, and Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. She was a Bernie Sanders supporter. All this after a weekend of high-profile talks with Mitt Romney, Rudy Giuliani, Chris Christie, and retired generals James Mattis. As it looks like Giuliani and Romney are high on the list for Secretary of State. Here's Vice President-elect Mike Pence.
They had a good meeting. It was a warm and a substantive exchange, and I know he's under active consideration to be the Secretary of State of the United States, along with some other very distinguished Americans. I know the President-elect was grateful that Mitt Romney came here to Trump National and spent some time and is willing to be considered for this important role at such an important time in the life of our nation.
All right, let's bring in Peter Doocy, live outside Trump Tower right now, as I just mentioned, on a very chilly day. Good to have you. What is the latest?
It is chilly. First day I've needed to wear a scarf in the last several months. But we have gotten word, Sandra, that from the vice president-elect that he's made some deals with some of the people that he's met with. We still do not know, though, what those deals are. We are still awaiting announcements on who will fill some of the vacant cabinet positions, which do include some of the highest profile positions in the U.S. government. Trump's schedule today includes sit-downs with the Democrat who bucked party leaders to back Bernie during the primaries. That's Hawaii Congresswoman and veteran Tulsi Gabbard, as well as Newt Gingrich, the former House Speaker, Elaine Chao, the former Labor Secretary and current wife of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Then there's Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin and Texas Governor Rick Perry. And we just heard from the winning campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, about exactly what the transition team likes those two for.
Energy for Perry.
Yes, or defense. I've heard his name mentioned for defense, energy. Mary Fallin, governor of Oklahoma, maybe interior. But again, it doesn't all need to lead to a position. It needs to lead to working together.
We also just got word that at some point this afternoon, the transition team is going to release a video with their legislative priorities come January. And topping the list of things to either clean up or get rid of are trade and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, then regulations they think have been hurting the economy and jobs, national security with a specific emphasis on cybersecurity, and then immigration along with abuses of visa systems and ethics reforms. Those are the things that Trump was really harping on while he was talking about draining the swamp in Washington, D.C. once he get there. But we did just get off a call with some members of the transition team. Trump will not be in D.C. or in NYC for Thanksgiving. They say he is going down to sunny Florida for a couple days to hang out at Mar-a-Lago with his family for the holiday. Sandra.
All right, Peter Ducey, thank you for the update from Trump Tower. Good to have you. Stay warm. All right, Adam, what do you make so far of the names being discussed? Some high-profile visits at Trump Tower over the weekend. Mitt Romney, obviously one of them.
Yeah, I thought the Mitt Romney one was very interesting. There's a lot of people that believe, people obviously were very surprised by that, especially with the words that were exchanged by both sides. For me, being a kind of a foreign policy guy and covering a lot of military stuff, I will say a lot of the guys and gals that I speak to in the military were really excited about Jim Mattis, Mad Dog as they call him. He is a soldier in the military. When you talk about leaders in the last few years,
Trump called him a general's general.
He's a general. Yeah, he did. And even before Trump mentioned that, if you talk to any guys in the field over the last 3 or 4 years, they'll tell you that his name always comes up. He's somebody that a lot of the men and women in the military really follow. And it's going to be interesting to see if he'll get that job.
And how are you? Are you being impressed at who he is assembling so far, and now who he's talking to? Because he's still got some big positions to fill.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show the wounds of primaries can be healed for the greater good after a general election. Mitt Romney especially, I don't believe he voted for him or endorsed him. So I like that both of these men are coming together and sort of putting the past in the past.
Let me remind you of some of the words that were exchanged. Okay. So he called Trump a fraud during the primary season, and he in turn called Romney a choke artist. And Pence, by the way, is confirming that he is being considered for Secretary of State. I mean, this would be a huge role in the Trump administration after they, quite frankly, just had some harsh words.
We have entirely different perspectives on foreign policy, though. If you remember in the 2012 debate against Obama, Romney's the one who brought up how dangerous Putin is. Obama called it a 1980s foreign policy. These are two different men with two vastly different views on foreign policy, as you brought up, Adam. And the question I have is, how do you reconcile two such different perspectives, especially when it comes to Russia?
And he would have to get in line with Donald Trump's view of the world, or the view that forms in this administration. But I just chuckle when you said interesting, because that's like down south. If they say, oh, that's different, it means it's terrible. But with Mitt Romney, what is so fascinating is this guy, we kind of forget, he's a businessman.
Right.
He is a businessman who is schooled at fixing things that are broken. And if you look at what he did with the Olympics in Salt Lake City, there was a north of like a $300 million hole. And he came in and did an audit of the entire operation.
Yeah, it was also, the Olympics were also incredibly corrupt. And I think that's a side of the story that not enough people are focusing on is Mitt Romney's background.
And that's what I just want to finish. That's what Newt Gingrich said this morning on Maria Bartiromo's show, is that the State Department needs fixing. That's why that would make sense.
Well, absolutely it does. And also it just goes to show you that the place is in a shambles even after Hillary Clinton's tenure. And I think there are a lot of people, even on the left, with, if you can overcome personality differences and philosophical differences by nominating someone like Mitt Romney for Secretary of State, it's also showing the left that you are willing to work with people who have disparate voices and backgrounds. And I think that's frankly very important. I was talking to a friend of mine who's an ultra leftist. I mean, patchouli so progressive. And this person said that they were a little terrified by the thought of someone like John Bolton or Rudy Giuliani running the State Department. But for some reason, Mitt Romney was a calming presence for people. That he looks like a politician.
I just want to add really quickly, because there was a former German economics and defense minister who was on Fox Business this morning, and he said, yeah, everyone in Europe says anybody but Rudy, which makes me think, well, Rudy, because
they don't get
we're tired.
Right.
Again, America first. We're tired of kowtowing to the Europeans and the rest of the world.
And you kind of hit on a little bit. First of all, I don't know if Rudy is really someone probably at the top of the list. I think maybe a situation you might find him get a different position. He was such a strong supporter of Trump, but is he somebody that would really be put in that position? I don't know if a lot of people behind the scenes may not necessarily believe that. Maybe he's better for Homeland Security or somewhere in that line. But I'm curious to see if it is Romney. I mean, what is our foreign policy?
Yeah.
I mean, really, the last 8 years, or the last 16 years in some respects, it's kind of all over the board. Our fingers are everywhere. So what is our foreign policy? I mean,
well, you have two men who are completely on the surface opposed to each other.
Right.
Can you firm that up with their two different points of view?
And is it going to anger his base by, quote, draining the swamp if you choose someone like Mitt Romney, who is, king of the establishment Republican? So I think you have to reconcile that with his core.
And you also have to reconcile quickly who's going to follow behind us, because the State Department employees, they're the ones that are going to be carrying out the U.S. policy.
All right,
and carrying knives for anybody involved with the Trump
administration. But not blackberries.
We're waiting on any announcements that may come out of Donald Trump, the president-elect. All right, Vice President-elect Mike Pence is saying Obamacare is going to be repealed right out of the gate after the inauguration. But the incoming Senate Minority Leader says Democrats will fight that tooth and nail. what to expect and whether Democrats are striking the right tone. And it sounds like President Obama is rethinking his plans to withdraw from politics after his term is up. He says he'll reserve the right to speak out if President-elect Trump's policies breach certain values or ideals, whether that's a good idea. And after the show, you can join our live chat by clicking on the Overtime tab, foxnews.com/outnumbered. Go to facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. You can chime in there as well. And of course, you can tweet us. We read them during the show. Be nice.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
It sounds like President-elect Donald Trump is going to take on Obamacare right away. He's long vowed to undo President Obama's signature health care legislation as soon as he's inaugurated, though he recently indicated he might keep a couple of parts of the law. But listen to Vice President-elect Mike Pence yesterday.
Decisions have been made that by the president-elect that he wants to focus out of the gate on repealing Obamacare. And beginning the process of replacing Obamacare with the kind of free market solutions that he campaigned on. From there, we'll work on issues ranging from ending illegal immigration, reviving our economy through tax reform, rebuilding the military, restoring the infrastructure of this country.
An Obamacare repeal is sure to spark a showdown with Democrats. Here's incoming Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer.
As you know, Democrats got a majority of the popular vote. Hillary did. So it's not a mandate. And when he's opposed to our values, we're going to go after him tooth and nail. For instance, we're not going to let him repeal Dodd-Frank or the rules we put in place to limit Wall Street. They're going to regret the day they tried to repeal the ACA.
Oh, Chuck Schumer. Okay, so Dagan, in my home state of Arizona, Obamacare went up over 100% in the premiums. It was the state hit hardest all across the nation. When people were saying that Hillary Clinton might win Arizona, this was the first thing I pointed to, and I was like, absolutely no way. Do you think there's hope that it will be repealed?
I don't think it's going to take the shape of a complete repeal, but I do think that this is one of the first things that they have to work on. And by the way, rule number one, Donald Trump won, and so did the Republicans with the coattails that he had. He doesn't kowtow to Chuck Schumer. 150 days, they can shove through whatever they want to, and they should. And they'll start with tax reform, I think, easiest thing to do. Corporate tax reform, maybe along with individual tax reform. They got a long list of things. Immigration reform, job creation, the wall, trade pacts. But I think that with this, they've got to focus on reducing the cost. They could easily just take the subsidy part of this and convert it to like a refundable tax credit, if you will. There's certain things that they can do piecemeal, but they've got it. But why do the Democrats act like, sorry, I don't mean to raise my voice, act like that this has been such a success for people? 25% increase in premiums, less choice, exchanges leaving states. People aren't even buying health care because they get nothing for their money. And this is a success that the Democrats are worried about going away.
I think you could argue that's why she lost, because the bad news about Obamacare and former President Clinton coming out saying this is just the craziest thing in the world. That all happened before Director Comey's October 28th announcement that they were proceeding with the investigation. And, she lost Pennsylvania because they also had a huge premium spike there. Now, the big question is, do you get rid of the pre-existing condition clause? Because if you don't get rid of it, if you keep it, you have to keep the individual mandate, which essentially means you keep two of the main pillars of the ACA in place. If that's the case, then Democrats can actually go in with Republicans and recraft the legislation in a bipartisan way, which is much smarter than this back and forth, heels dug in, scorched earth bickering that Schumer is doing right now. And if President-elect Trump says he wants to keep pre-existing conditions, that is, again, a signal to the left that this is an area where we can work together. But if that's how they're starting this transition, it's bad news for the rest of the country.
What about this was a money vote? I mean, a lot of Americans, they say Obamacare, but they don't really know everything about it. They just know that the premiums went up.
They know how it affects them.
Exactly. Yeah. One of my friend's father, he's a huge Democrat. He goes, yeah, even he was against it before the vote. He's like, my dad's paying $1,200 more this year. He's a teacher, and his health care went up $1,200 more. So it's a pocketbook vote. So it comes down to, there needs to be something in place. So I think that a total repeal is probably not in the cards, but it's got to be a significant change.
Well, Chuck Schumer doesn't do himself any favors by not acknowledging the problem there. In this interview that he gave to the New York Times in his office, he's basically saying flat out that Democrats would not cooperate in any way with overturning the Affordable Care Act. At the same time, he makes concessions in this same speech that as long as we don't sell out, we have an obligation to the millions of Americans who are struggling. Mr. Trump won by appealing to middle America better than his opponent.
It's the pocketbook.
Yeah. And by the way, it's nice to see that the Democrats are still living in fantasy land in terms of the financial situation of the American people, and that just means that the Republicans are going to get their way.
If they were doing such a bang-up job, why don't they have the majority in the Senate right now?
Right.
Yeah, and Trump won. All right, it's that simple. Meanwhile, President Obama not ruling out the possibility of speaking out on politics once he leaves office. At a press conference yesterday in Peru, the president saying he, quote, doesn't plan to be a constant critic of his successor, but he won't necessarily stay silent either.
If there are issues have less to do with the specifics of some legislative proposal or battle, but go to core questions about our values and our ideals. And if I think that it's necessary or helpful for me to defend those ideals, then I'll examine it when it comes.
And the New York Times reporting that President Obama won't fade away. The newspaper writing, quote, in his remarks to activists, Mr. Obama urged them to stop moping and to ratchet up their opposition to Mr. Trump by Thanksgiving. He promised to join their cause soon after telling them, quote, you're going to see me early next year and we're going to be in a position where we can start cooking up all kinds of great stuff to do. So I have this bet that President Obama is going to be the most vocal and bitter ex-president we've had in modern history. He's going to be the polar opposite of how respectful President Bush has been to his legacy. My favorite thing is he's like, I'm not going to talk now, but I'll talk after Trump is elected. That's like 60 days from now. It's like 2 months from now.
Just follow me on this, because either we have to elect really, really old people to the presidency so we don't have this problem, so we don't have decades of blathering, or, and I know this would have profound repercussions for the Supreme Court, just park President Obama on the Supreme Court for the rest of his life. Then he's going to be so busy doing that high-minded jurisprudence that he can't
tweet us your thoughts.
Not enough spotlight if you're on the high court.
Exactly right.
You can't run your mouth.
You park your enemies. You just have to hope.
I mean, we haven't really had a lot of, in my lifetime, I'm trying to think about, President Carter's come out a few times and been controversial. President Reagan, first President Bush were pretty quiet, obviously. President Clinton. And then, of course, President 41 was also, kind of was pretty quiet. I mean, really, the only comments you hear were from Cheney in the last few years. Cheney's come out a few times, the former vice president, of course, and been controversial. So it is going to be interesting to see, because President Obama is young. He is obviously very energetic, and clearly somebody that a lot of people look up to. And what's going to be interesting to see is how much is pride going to get in the way? Is it going to be a point where he doesn't want his presidency to be torn down, and he's going to do what he can?
Because he came out so strong. Right after Trump's victory, he came out and tried to unite the country and say, give the guy a chance.
Right.
Even if you don't like him, you don't believe in him, you don't like his values. He started out strong, and now why are we here?
People forgot he had the Democratic Congress.
Yep.
And they got nothing done. And so it's going to be interesting to see.
They got the ACA done, and it's falling apart.
The ACA, yeah. But that's.
I thought that President Obama had learned from Bush 43 in terms of treating the current president with grace and care and respect by saying nothing. And maybe he sticks to what we've seen in the past several weeks. But again, he wants to be a star. I've said all along, I think he wants to have a talk show. So you have a reality show star who becomes president, a president who becomes a reality show star. Wow. You never know.
Wow.
Hey, but by the way,
he could be outnumbered one day.
As somebody who's dated a lot of people, bitterness is a terrible cologne.
Whoa.
He needs to go park himself in a shed.
I'm glad I'm in the middle and I have a buffer between us.
All right. Open it up to the couch. Going back to the words of the mayor in St. Louis, saying this gives us a very, very strong idea of how dangerous it is to be a police officer in this country right now. Why do you think this is happening?
I think there's so much turmoil, there's so much animosity, and so much of it is misdirected. And you have to realize this is not a majority of people. And in fact, there was just a survey that came out a few weeks ago that said more people have faith and admiration and respect for police officers than have in many years, especially in places like Los Angeles, that has seen its difficulty with its police
highest
department.
level of respect since 1967.
That's absolutely right. And I spoke with a lot of police officers lately who say they feel targeted. targeted. And, you know, they feel like there's a lack of respect with some of the people that they come across on a day-to-day basis. And I think it is such a difficult job, and it is such an inappropriate reaction if you think that there are institutions that need to be reformed in this country, like the criminal justice system. And, you know, I think about these people because, by and large, all these cops who are shot are, they have families, they have kids. You know, we learned about the one officer who was killed in California who just came off maternity leave. And then you have these incidents that may be unrelated, but to law enforcement, they all feel very much
and
the
one
same.
of those officers in St. Louis, a husband, a father of 3 children. But just to get it to the root of this and for these communities to figure out what to do and how to respond, Adam, is a whole nother thing.
We cover this in the field, and every time it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's easy to blame social media, but it really is kind of the root of the problem in a lot of these cases, because a lot of misinformation gets out there. A lot of people if you are frustrated with the department or with an officer in particular, you don't take it out on the entire industry. And I have a lot of friends that I grew up with that are police officers, guys that I work with now that I've been at Fox. I know you guys do too. And they're always targeted. They've always know that there's a target on their back, but never more than today. I mean, and if you don't think that affects their job when they go out, I mean, here they're serving us. They're doing amazing things in communities, and some of these really poor communities we go into, and in upper scale communities, they do phenomenal work 99% of the time. And it's unfortunate that the few times that it doesn't go right, for whatever reason, that gets exasperated. And the problem is these guys now are going out there, and gals, and they're going, not only they already had that target, but now they're really uncertain, and all it does is affect what they do as a job.
So how should this play out politically, Megan? Because here we are in this transition. We're about to have a new president in the White House, Trump. How should he respond? He campaigned on, he is the law and the law candidate, right? The law and order candidate.
I actually really like this aspect of when he was running. I mean, these stories just give me chills. There was an incident that happened in Arizona where a police officer was shot at a gas station sitting in his car. Even if these are smaller incidences, even if it's only in, you know, the teens or whatever, it's still a trend that's happening, and it only seems to be getting worse. And for me, I would like some responsibility in the media when they completely vilify all police officers when unfortunate incidents happen, and it's just 0 to 700, and then all of a sudden you have to have a hashtag like Blue Lives Matter to show that not all of us feel the same way about all police officers having, you know, whatever, a certain agenda. So for me, if I were President Trump, I would start with the media.
For those who are opposed or complain, like I have a friend that complained about police officers to me a few weeks ago, and I said to him, so what's your response then? What do you want? What do you want to happen? Do you want them to go away? I mean, there's no. Let's work to make it better.
That's go ahead, Sarah.
And should President Obama speak up?
Everybody should speak up who hasn't spoken up so far, who has contributed to the quite frankly, these negative feelings against police departments. You know what? Blue lives do matter because we need the blue to protect all of us, whether we're white, black, any ethnicity, any race in this country. The police are there for us, period.
Well said. We'll leave it there. A showdown looming as officials from a growing number of cities say they will defy President-elect Trump on immigration, putting billions in federal funding at risk. What Mr. Trump's team is saying, that's next.
All right, President-elect Donald Trump's team now weighing in as a growing number of cities are reaffirming their status as sanctuary cities, shielding illegal immigrants from deportation. And now incoming White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus not ruling out cutting federal funding to places that refuse to follow the law. Watch.
I think this is a matter of negotiation. I think it's something that the Trump administration, myself and others included that are at the appropriate levels of government will deal with. But certainly I can't imagine that too many Americans are watching this and thinking that it's a good idea for a city to allow for blanket amnesty, ignoring federal law, and then saying, now give me $500 million. No, that's not the way life works.
All right, so how different is life going to be under a Trump administration for some of these big sanctuary cities, especially on the West Coast where you live, Los Angeles and San Francisco specifically?
Yeah, we've covered this a little bit. I covered the Kate Styling case in San Francisco as well. My thing is, can't we find a happy medium here? In the sense that I understand my friends who I've interviewed or live in these cities who are in favor of sanctuary cities will say we want the minority communities not to be afraid to report crimes. Okay. Is there a way we can...
Special Order 40 with the LAPD.
Absolutely. Now, is there a way we can can do that but still report when you have somebody arrested who's been, who's committed a crime, who's now being released from jail, who's not even supposed to be in the country legally. Why can't those individuals be separated out from the law-abiding folks who you want to report? Why can't we separate out those who are committing the crimes and then appropriately hand them over to our folks that will get them out of the country?
No, but it also creates a safer environment.
Absolutely.
Not only for people who come into this country, but also the communities where they live. And that way, we talk about assimilation in places like Western Europe and how immigration is so vastly different there. But here, it seems as though, this conversation that we're having right now is so incredibly divisive, and it really doesn't have to be. What does the Trump administration have to do in order to make immigration legal, safer, and more effective in this country without alienating people who want to come here, work hard, and have a better life?
I actually think this isn't a debate that's going to be had. Donald Trump, the first thing he said, build the wall, deport him. It's the cornerstone of his campaign. He won by huge margins, including former Obama voters who switched over to him. Americans don't want this nuanced conversation as much as some of us in the media do.
Yeah.
They just want people, Kate Steinle's family, maybe talk to them about how they feel about illegal immigration in these sanctuary cities. I have a huge problem with sanctuary cities. I love hearing Reince Priebus say cut them off, cut off their federal funding. My argument here is, okay, if they're allowed to break the law there, then how about I just don't pay taxes? How about that?
Now,
Let's
like
delineate.
The differentiation between, it's violent crimes versus other crimes. So if it's drug
still
crimes,
crime.
or if you rob my apartment, and you're here illegally, New York City it gives you sanctuary here.
Yeah.
You know what? Where the power is in the money.
Yes.
And $10 billion.
Yes.
There's more than $10 billion in just funding to New York City.
Yes.
You look at that map of all those sanctuary cities. You bear down on them and say you're not going to get federal funding. I guarantee.
Now, there's one big issue everybody's forgetting about. A lot of the people that live in these areas, in San Francisco, in some of the communities that are sanctuary cities, I speak Spanish. I've been out there. I've covered these stories. They don't want the crime in their neighborhood. They want the bad people out too. So it's my whole thing is, okay, fine. If you're somebody who can find a middle ground here, or if you want to get rid of them altogether, that's fine. But why can't we at least make a first step here? Because these communities, they don't want the criminals back. They want them gone. They don't want them in there.
What's interesting, too, is they haven't answered the question about DREAM Act students. I saw Reince Priebus talking about this. They said they don't know yet. And that's a whole different conversation because you're talking about people who are brought here as babies.
Well, maybe it's not so black and white, though. I mean, you're from a border state, Arizona, where Joe Arpaio was not reelected.
I don't think it's black and white. I think the whole swath of the American public want a simple answer to a complicated problem.
Yeah.
I never thought this would be easy for President Trump, but I do think, as much as some of us in the media want to have nuanced conversation about immigration, which God knows I've been trying to do for years, it doesn't matter. He won on Build the Wall.
Reince Priebus put it very simply when he said you can't ignore federal law and then ask for federal money and have it both ways. That's a very simple message, but Dagan, to go back to your point, over $10 billion is estimated at stake if they choose to withdraw federal funding. That's going to enact change.
Just from New York City.
Just New York City.
Yeah.
All right, but how about, listen, if you get arrested and you're here in this country illegally, explain to a reasonable person why you get to stay. I don't care what the crime is.
But there, you have to admit, there's a difference between coming into this country illegally, because we have a horrible immigration system where you have to wait in line for years, and someone who commits a violent felony. There is a difference between those people, and when they are conflated, it is an oversimplified argument.
I think robbery, even if it wasn't a violent crime, is a crime that's... You're here illegally, it gets you sent back to where you came from.
All right. Well, the hit Broadway musical Hamilton, we're all going to break into song right now. Going off script a bit, a cast member lecturing Vice President-elect Mike Pence from the stage. President-elect Donald Trump demanding an apology. Fair game or the wrong time and place? We will discuss.
Mr. Pence handling it graciously, saying he was not offended.
When we arrived, we heard a few boos and we heard some cheers, and I nudged my kids and reminded them that's what freedom sounds like. And but at the end, I did hear what was said from the stage, and I can tell you I wasn't offended by what was said. I'll leave to others whether that was the appropriate venue to say it.
But his boss, President-elect Trump, firing back, demanding an apology via Twitter. One of several such tweets reading, quote, "The cast and producers of Hamilton, which I hear is highly overrated, should immediately apologize to Mike Pence for their terrible behavior," unquote. I will say, this is not having seen it, but it is the most elitist, least inclusive, most exclusionary event going on in this country, because it's going to cost you about $1,200 a ticket if you wanted to go see it tomorrow night. But I want to know what you think of this cast.
That's right. That's a bargain basement ticket. You know, that's in the 400 level. You're actually sitting at MSG. You're not even on Broadway if you're buying a ticket for $1,200. I think a lot of this is just a reaction. I'm going to talk about this a lot on my show tonight on the Fox Business Network because I think oftentimes you have people who rarely have a concentrated set of eyeballs, and there is no more pristine and spherical bubble than Broadway here in New York City. Everyone thinks that it's in Hollywood, but talk about a group of people where they think that everyone thinks exactly like they do. I don't have a problem with their expression. I don't have a problem with what they had to say, but I think singling out members of your audience is a little bit tacky.
Invite them backstage.
No, seriously.
Let's have a conversation.
Invite them backstage and give us an opportunity
before you. But I don't like the booing, because Michelle Obama, the first lady, was booed at a NASCAR race 5 years ago by a few people, but I thought that was
But what
uncool.
class did Mike Pence show there when he was asked to respond to this? He said, I can tell you I wasn't offended by what was said. I'll leave it to others whether that was the appropriate venue to say it.
This is what makes America great and annoying.
Yeah.
It's great that we can, no, seriously, it's great that we can have people that can do that and not have to worry about when they leave the theater getting shot or getting put in prison. At the same time, it's sad and annoying that we can't find a way, because like his comment at the beginning, the diverse Americans that are alarmed by your presidency. Well, that basically says that all the other millions that voted for this president, whether you like him or not, are all white and not diverse, which is complete crap.
Yeah, diversity means everything except Homeland and NRA members and women who are pro-life. Liberals always preach empathy, except when it comes to conservatives. So one thing I thought was hilarious about this, and Christians, yes. One thing I thought was hilarious, that if you do historical research on Alexander Hamilton, he thought you could be deported simply for disagreeing with George Washington. So maybe think about the person you're portraying and do a little research on the history of the man that you're portraying in the theater. I'm okay with booing at politicians as long as they're on stage, as long as they're at a rally. Past that, it's never, ever, ever
And by the way, I should point out Brandon Victor Dixon, who plays Aaron Burr, who is the one speaking in that clip. He said at the very beginning, hey, we're not here to boo, because people were booing. So he was as gracious as you could be. But again, he's like wagging his finger at the vice president-elect from the stage.
They're not moving the needle for conservatives. We're so polarized. And if you think booing our vice president and preaching to him from the stage is going to somehow change the minds of Trump voters, all it does is exacerbate stereotypes about New Yorkers and people in the theater.
Right, and highlight the reason that Trump got elected the president in the first place. That was a big exclamation point. Cast of Hamilton, thank you very much. Supporters of President-elect Donald Trump launching a counteroffensive against those Starbucks feel-good holiday cups, and now the campaign is going viral after one Starbucks employee apparently took offense. A latte controversy to discuss. Next.
Operation Trump Cup, going viral after one Starbucks employee refused to write the president-elect's name on a customer's coffee cup and call it out loud. The Trump Cup creator starting the campaign in response to a video posted online of that incident, saying it's a First Amendment exercise and we are in a culture war. He says the rules are simple. Go to a Starbucks and tell them your name is Trump. If they refuse, catch it on video. Starbucks responded in a statement saying calling out customers' names is just a fun ritual which has rarely been abused by customers. So is it an abuse if you ask them to put Trump on your cup?
I think it's funny because Starbucks is their response is basically, this is why we can't have nice things. You guys are going to wreck it for everyone.
It goes back to my canned comment. This is what I love about America, and this is what I hate about America. It's like, really, guys? It's a coffee. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't know. California, if I said Trump in certain places, I'd probably be shot. So I'm just going to use my red.
Dagan, could you try this for us? Could you go across the street? Because there's one out those windows.
I'm totally on board with this for one reason, because that dude looks like our stage manager, Josh Pad.
Probably voted like him, too.
I put a photo on Instagram. I put a photo on Instagram of me and Josh, and I said the beginnings of a dirtbag convention. And I was referring to myself. So
wow.
The thing is, it's like Starbucks is asking for this. Remember the unity conversation that they tried to start with the cups? So they're getting it back.
I saw a tweet that was someone, she was like, I work at Starbucks and I'm going to spit in any Trump supporters' cups. Wow. And then her next tweet was, I've been fired from Starbucks.
That's really funny.
I've been fired from Starbucks.
I mean, was P.T. Barnum?
There's a unity cup.
Didn't P.T. Barnum say that there's no such thing as bad press? I mean, you're going to have people go, I got to believe that some of those guys, like maybe the guy in that picture who's going to go into Starbucks, probably doesn't go in and buy lattes very often. Just going to throw that.
More of a drink guy?
I'm just using my name at Starbucks.
More of a beer guy.
All right, thanks to Adam Housley. Thank you again.
Adam.
Thanks,
We're staying right here for Outnumbered Overtime on the web, and find us on Facebook at facebook.com/outnumberedfnc.
It's going to be fun.
We're back on TV tomorrow at noon Eastern. Happening now. Starts right now.